I'm more upset with Greg Biffle. He's the most unprofessional little scaredy cat I've ever seen in my life. He wouldn't even fight me like a man after. He needs a freaking whooping. I'm going to give it to him.
Good day, race fans, and welcome to the Intentional Wreck Podcast. The podcast made by race fans for race fans, from the casuals to the lifelong gearheads. My name is Jeff, and I'm here with my fellow hosts Corey and Finn, and you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and iHeartRadio under the name Intentional Wreck. You can also find us on Twitter under the handle @intwreckpod. That's @INTWRECKPOD. After waking up from what I would consider a basic nap of a race last week, we're coming into Sonoma and an off week soon, and which will be nice, and then also the end of the Fox broadcast for the year, which I've made no secrets about the fact that I am rejoicing at that and excited about that being the case, and am now just only hoping that NBC doesn't completely shit the bed and make me wrong going into it, but they didn't last year and they haven't in past years. What do you guys think? How are you feeling coming into this week and after watching Gateway this past week?
So, on to your note about Fox, right? I think the tragic thing about it is they really focus so much on bringing guests on without the consideration of continuity and building a repertoire. Putting on especially with back-to-back rain delays, right? Putting on almost 7 hours of commentary is a very difficult task always, right? And we are unlike any sport in that play-by-play doesn't hover around a single ball, right? Play-by-play doesn't hover around one thing. There is constant things to discuss on the racetrack, right? Be it strategy calls, be it what's going on with the temperature, being what's going on with the leaders, as well as 40 individual stories. And I think we lose so much of that because we are interested more so in making sure Tony Stewart or Kenny Wallace or whoever the fuck is in the booth this week gets to say their piece. And there's always that like awkward, anytime a guest person's on, they want to make jokes and they say things and they will, because things are fresh to them, right? You watch a podcast, right? And you'll notice that there's like meta jokes that like Joe Rogan or something, that they always say whatever. And then when a guest comes in, it's their first experience in that. So they like will rehash those old jokes and things like that. Right. And then when you keep swapping guests, you just keep getting some very surface level stuff, right? And not everybody's built for that. Tony was built for that. Kurt Busch was built for that. Kurt Busch did a fantastic job at COTA, right? He did the COTA race. Yeah. Danica Patrick, extremely knowledgeable, did a really good job at feeding off that. Carl was fantastic. And then you get whatever the fuck Kenny Wallace put out, and a little bit of whatever, Michael Waltrip. But we all know what we were going to get with Michael Waltrip. Actually, technically, you knew what we were going to get with Kenny Wallace. And these are guys like that, Corey, you might not know about, but these aren't exactly the intuitive guys of the sport, right? Like Danica, we knew was going to be knowledgeable. She has to be. She drives so many different kinds of cars. She's very, very such a technical driver. You have to be in Indy, so no surprise. Carl Edwards is one of the best wheelman this sport has ever seen. No surprise, we got some good stuff from him. We already know Tony Stewart's repertoire. Kurt Busch is a champion. And even Kenseth was pretty good when we got a little bit of Matt Kenseth. Again, the champions, they come cool. Kenny Wallace, I don't think won a race in NASCAR or not at Cup. Michael Waltrip was a kind of a one-hit wonder. He was really good at super speedway racing, and then I don't think he won anything but super speedway races in his full time. His brother was kind of the Darrell Waltrip is kind of the thing. So I guess my point is it's been a brutal couple races with Fox in particular because the rain and having to sit around and just talk about it. So
for me with Gateway, I was distracted. The racing itself was so boring that all of the stuff going on around it was like super distracting. We had Chase being out. We had a pit crew guy get hit by a car. We had the broadcast go out for like 20 or 30 minutes or something like that. They had the power go out at the track. It's just like all this stuff. It just felt like a big mess. You know what I mean? And it's like for all of the to manage through all of that giant mess and all of this random stuff going on, and still the kind of product that came out was what we saw on the track was kind of like, why did we even do that, man? Like, what else could have happened? You know what I mean? Like just to kind of throw the whole flow of the day off. And I'm probably missing something, but thank goodness the
Cautions
pictures
during
guys okay.
planned pyro.
Dude, brake rotors blowing up left and right, brake
Oof.
rotors flying into the crowd.
That dude got
Like
hit.
that happened.
That
Yeah,
kid got
man,
hit.
like just a wild time for like a super vanilla product on the racetrack.
Yeah.
To have all this other randomness going on. It just felt very weird. And I think Sonoma is Fox's last race. Then there's a 1 week break. Then we go to Nashville, and that's NBC's first. So hopefully for Fox, for their efforts that they have put in, what we get next Sunday in Sonoma is like interesting and kind of nonsense free, which is a stretch, I feel like, at this point with what we've seen.
Right.
But only time will tell. But I guess they did the best they could with a kind of ridiculous Sunday at the track.
And
What a
lately
wild
we've
time
had
that
so
was.
much rain, dude. Dover rained
Yes.
out. Charlotte rained out. This one wasn't rain, but lightning, and then
Lightninged out. Yeah.
and everything that was all the red flags after Noah dropped fuel or whatever was leaking onto the track after Noah spun it and things like that. But I mean, the one shining light was Kyle Busch, right? Rowdy goes and gets win 3 in 15 races. It just gets even worse for Joe Gibbs Racing because the big thing was they were struggling to find sponsors. Okay, well, RCR has sponsors, right? And he's won 3 races and 70-something starts at Joe Gibbs. In his last 70 starts at Joe Gibbs, right? He wins 3 in his first 15 at RCR. RCR, a B-tier team for all intents and purposes, right? I mean, Austin Dillon's a 30th place car every week, and you got, Kyle winning races. And not only that, you want to say Kyle's not marketable. All 3 of his wins are different sponsors. 3 Chai, the grills, and then Lucas Oil at the
That's it.
at Auto Club.
That's a profitable bunch of wins right there for plenty of people.
So
for
3
sure,
unique new sponsors have all gotten to
Good.
see their cars in victory lane already.
My prediction also, by the way.
It was I think you were the first person
yeah.
to predict a win in the pod.
Nice.
It only took us 15 weeks.
I'll have to go back
With
and
3
clarify
guesses
that.
per week.
The track looked like it was going to be good and racy. That after that high line kind of developed and people were moving up, but it just looked like as they moved up, you just weren't able to do anything at all. And Busch did have a good restart, where I think he ended up passing 2 cars on the outside for the lead. But man, that's probably the only memorable thing I even saw all day long.
Highly unmemorable racing
Right.
week.
Yep.
In terms of what the actual product on the track was. And I mean, in terms of the Kyle Busch thing, like as a semi-newish fan, like you said a couple weeks ago, like I'm a hardcore now, but like I've only been in it a year. I love seeing Kyle Busch stuff. Like
Yeah.
I think he's a super interesting guy.
Mhm.
And for a sport that for a lot of people requires some personality in order for them to get involved, he brings that personality. He's not Mr. Milquetoast, right? He's not boring. He's just in your face. But like everything even when he doesn't seem like he's trying to, everything he says has this like edge, like that race car driver edge to it, where he's just like, he's faster than you, he's smarter than you, he's better than you. Like that's just how he is. And I think he's a super interesting character. Great for the sport, clearly.
I
On
think
top of being one of the best in it right now.
he's aged well. He hasn't aged like his brother, in that his brother was like super wholesome by the end of his career. But he's aged well in that while maintaining that villain type persona, it's still. And I think one of the big things is I was reading something about Larson and Busch, and they have a lot of respect for each other and they always race each other very clean. And that's another thing too with Kyle. Kyle's known as a very, very aggressive driver, but he races clean. The problem with Kyle is he gets really pissy when people don't race him clean back. Then he gets all angry about it. And then you see Kyle. Now, you would hate 18, 19, 20-year-old Kyle Busch. Hendrick Kyle Busch, Corey would hate. I'm gonna find a compilation of Hendrick Kyle Busch clips.
Well, there was a time where the Busch brothers in general were up there as two of the more hated figures in NASCAR, just period.
Yeah.
You know, there was a time where in the same category where you see the vitriol right now, where some people throw it towards guys like Chastain, or you see some of the, like, I don't know. I feel like we don't quite see some of the same unified vitriol towards certain drivers now that, you know, maybe we did in the past. And I don't know, maybe I sound kind of like a boomer here, but it's one of those things where there was a time where people would tune in just to watch in hopes that the Busch brothers would get eliminated every single time.
Right.
You know, they were two very hated figures at one point in racing, and it's just interesting to see the way that their careers have developed over the years.
For sure. So, Corey LaJoie, I want to hear your guys' raw thoughts. Corey LaJoie obviously got to take over the 9 car for the weekend. This is his big break, right? Everybody's talking about Corey LaJoie wrote the letter to Rick Hendrick, and apparently back in his old podcast, you know, Corey used to say, if I had Joe Gibbs cars, if I had Denny's car every week, I'd be winning races all the time. Type thing, and obviously a small team guy has to bring his own sponsorship to make the Spire car even remotely competitive. So I don't think they said he cracked the top 20 all day in the 9. So just thoughts alone from each of you. Do you take stock into that? You are a B tier or higher Cup owner, and you've got a potential ride available, and Corey LaJoie was on your scouting list. How much stock do you take in Corey LaJoie in his 9 performance?
Well, maybe this is just me, but I don't take a ton out of that simply because I firmly believe it takes a few times in that car to really tame it and understand what it's doing. And I also don't know if Gateway is necessarily that track. Now, there's definitely an argument to be made that his performance was completely lackluster as far as what you would have expected is in seeing him in a premier car. I mean, again, it's not like he went to anything beer team. He was driving the freaking 9. He's driving a Hendrick premier car. Like it, you know, you get in the 5 or you get in the 9 and you're driving, you know, top stuff. So you expected more, but I also think that the expectation and the performance didn't match each other at all. But I think there is something to be said about gaining some experience in top tier equipment at a couple of different scenarios. So I don't know if I'm in that position if I lose too much, if I had some stock in that already, but it's definitely, you know, I definitely have my eyes a little closer on it than I would have been before if I was certain that this was going to be the guy to get behind good wheels and make a spin, you know.
And I don't think, to me at least, like in the sort of hypothetical scenario you presented, Finn, to me it's not a factor, right? Because Larson had a bad day too, right? And Hocevar took LaJoie's car and finished like 17th or something.
Well, he
So
was
it's
running
not-
16th and his
Right,
rotor
it's not-
broke, so he
but, like-
finished last. But yes, he was
Oh,
running
right, no.
significantly higher and passing cars.
So-
Yes.
So, to me, in the scenario you presented, I want LaJoie, right? Because he's a marketable guy. He is like the blue collar. I mean, he's a Southern boy, good looking dude, good hair, right? Like he's got all those kind of things that you seem to like want in those top tier NASCAR drivers for your team. And he's talented, right? He's got the podcast. He's a good race car driver. I mean, to me, if you ask me if I would like to have him in the 4 or the 10 next year, sure, absolutely. Why not? I mean, like he takes dog water tier cars and puts them in the mid teens in the top 10 every now and then.
Which would be great for SHR right
It
now.
will be perfect for Stuart Haas. By the way, side note, really glad that we're done with Fox so Tony can like figure out what's wrong with his race team instead of worrying about what he looks like on camera. So let's figure that out as well. But yeah, give me LaJoie 100 times out of 100. This is no impact. And the racing was terrible. So like no one was doing anything. So why would he be any different than the whole rest of the field?
Right.
Right. So I don't know.
Yeah, and so what I say is I will agree but disagree, right? And where I agree is I do not think the performance at Worldwide Technology hurts the Corey LaJoie stock for me in my hypothetical race team for a couple reasons. One, the 9 car has not had a consistent driver at all this year, right? We've gone Elliott to Berry to Elliott to LaJoy, right? Imagine trying to create setups for 3 distinct driving styles throughout the year, right? It's just not going to happen, right? They're just trying to field a car that can get owners points and whatever. Alan Gustafson is yes, any Chase Elliott fan. He's not the adjustments guy. Alan Gustafson, right? The crew chief. There's a lot of Chase Elliott winning in spite of that team versus them kind of putting him in the best positions. I can't remember the last time I felt like he made a good strategy call was Richmond, the race we were at, where Barry somehow got second, but that wasn't a strategy call in the grand scheme. I don't know. It was like a Hail Mary that worked out. Same way you'd look at Kyle Busch at COTA, where he just pitted with like 10 laps to go and 28th, just hoping. In case caution comes out, I won't pit and get to come out in the top. Oh, it worked off, It's a Hail Mary that worked out. The setups, yeah, getting stuck back, not being able to practice and put together a good qualifying effort and setup. He's stuck back there. Not to mention Corey LaJoy wrecked like 72. His engine blew up 72 laps into the race last year. So it's not even like he's got experience at this track
at all in any
much
car.
right in a way that matters too much. So I don't feel like it hurts the stock. I don't feel like Carson Hocevar having a good day in the Spire car hurts his stock. I will
He's
say
mad
this
at himself, though, today, guaranteed.
Huh?
He's mad. LaJoy.
Oh, he's
mad
definitely
at
beating himself up. But
Yeah.
this is where I disagree with you guys. I think Corey LaJoy has raced himself out of a bad drive this year in the 7th Spire car, as is. He's not finishing up near the top 10. He's really only a threat at the super speedway races, which is fine, but that's like not something that a big team's going to look for anymore, right? He's not particularly good at road courses, which is a third of the schedule. He's not a good short track driver. He's decent at the mile and a half. He was in the early part of the season. But I just don't think the results are there for a 31, 32-year-old driver. But then again, you look at Ross Chastain, who's roughly the same age. He went from driving an Xfinity ride and for Call League, struggling to win races and this, that, and whatever. And then he comes up has a couple good appearances in the 42 late last year or 2 years ago. And then boom, Trackhouse gets bought. He gets brought over with the Chip Ganassi buyout. And he's good. It's weird. He's not too old that he can't earn a ride. Him having his own sponsorship could get him in the 10 because that's notoriously the sponsorship car for Stewart Haas. But at the same time, there's younger talent, right? People are going to want Zane Smith before they go after him. Hopefully they want Todd Gilliland before they go after him. But no, there's just a lot of young talent in the sport that's on the way up. So being 31 years old, and not really having, I don't know, he's not even like close. He's not lead laps. He's not having good races. He's just kind of like around. But then again, I don't know how bad that Spire car is because the other Spire car is the second worst car on the track. That's not a Rick Ware car. So Ty Dillon is literally the backest of back markers this year. So I don't know how good the 7 is to speak upon where they realistically are with speed and where he's finishing. But he's not up there competing for top 15s right now. I think he's got one top 15? Or one top 20 all right, he got 17 at Charlotte. So 2 top 20s since COTA, where he finished 11th. 2 top 20s. I don't think that's something that's going to earn you a cup ride. Whereas,
it's not real good.
Yeah.
Definitely not real good.
So now, granted, that's box score watching. That's not like great analysis of speed and where he was in a race. You know what I'm saying? Like I can go, Alex Bowman finished almost last at Bristol Dirt. He sucks. And it's like, well, he blew a tire on the last lap running 8th. Okay. So, I don't box score watch. Don't develop your opinion. I'm just saying I haven't seen him enough. Whereas every week I'm screaming from the rooftops that Todd Gilliland. But I think the smartest thing for Corey LaJoy, go down to the Xfinity Series and dominate there. If there's not a ride here, don't wait around in the Spire car, bro. I wouldn't. I don't think it's a good idea to wait around the Spire car.
You'll also probably get more scout eyes. I mean, I don't know. To that same extent, though, we've seen people get a shot at Cup, go down to Xfinity, and then not make their way up. So I think there's reasonably there's reasonably a chance to
Right. Now-
say that that's not necessarily the move, but I get what you're going. Also, there's going to be a lot of people that are looking for more aspiring options coming through Xfinity.
Now,
So
LaJoy
that's
has
definitely.
And LaJoy has also ridden the Truck Series starts. I think he has a couple Truck Series starts this year. And I remember him saying on his podcast he's excited for the Truck Series starts because it's good to finally be in good equipment. I don't even think he finished top 5 in a Truck Series race this year. So, again, and then you put Larson and Bubba in a truck this year at North Wilkesboro, and they're 1-2.
Yeah.
Like there's a clear difference of being able to wheel around it. I think that I think I'm definitely a little bit more down on Corey LaJoy than I was earlier in the year. Don't think he isn't deserving, but I think there's just a lot of guys that are deserving, and he's going to race himself out of those spots. So
It's tough competition, without a doubt. It is going to be
Right.
tough sledding to try and get through, no matter what.
Speaking of tough competition, it's going to be tough competition to get top 30th in points with the biggest suspension penalty in NASCAR history
Ooh,
being
boy.
rained down on Chase Briscoe after we didn't get to talk about it on the pod. But yeah, how are you feeling as I mean, I feel like you guys already knew it was going to be a win or nothing for you guys, right?
I mean, I disagree with that premise completely. He was there. He was 13th, 12th, 13th,
Well-
14th in points for a month.
You got to
He was doing
remember
fine.
that's assuming that all of the race winners are in the top 16 in points at the
Sure, I
time of the
understand.
playoffs, right? Because it
But
might just be the top
points-
5 in points that technically point their way in. And we
I
had
kind of expected him somewhere in the 12, 13, 14 in points by the end of the season. Was
Right.
kind of the trend that we were seeing, I thought anyway. But I mean, dude, this is the Corey Russell effect, if ever there was one. I'm telling you, it's the ultimate proof. It's just not meant to be, dude. This guy probably won't win another race for 20 years. No, I'm being hyperbolic. But anyway, it's rough to watch, man. It really, really is. As somebody who's come in and found this driver and this team that I really, really like, and to just watch it be an abject disaster at anything that isn't Phoenix or Bristol dirt, right? Like, that's it. Charlotte last year was a blast watching him chase down Larson. That was a year ago. We have yet to see since then anything remotely resembling race winning speed out of the 14.
outside
Since
of when
Memorial
Tyler
Day
Reddick
22.
since Tyler Reddick slid up into him at Bristol Dirt and then kind of knocked him out. But at that
Yeah.
point, that is the fastest he has been. Yes. Now,
Yes.
he did have a bit of a hot rod, if I'm not mistaken, at Phoenix last year and at Martinsville last year. He was solid. He wasn't amazing, but you're right. Race winning speed, it felt like it dropped off a cliff. That part, again, NASCAR cheating is so different than other things. I don't think there's anything that I would like change my reputation of SHR. Even if
No,
they
not at all.
intentionally did it.
In fact, I
I
would
don't
be
even-
mad if they weren't doing that.
Not only that, they
I
finished
know this. I
20th.
know this game, dude.
Remember they
All
finished
these
on
teams are
Charlotte?
cheating.
20th, yeah.
If they are not trying to find every single corner they can cut to get speed, they have no business being in this sport. Like,
Right.
that is the maybe I'm wrong, right? I'm the new guy. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But
Nah,
that is
that's-
genuinely how I feel. These guys, their entire job is to make that car go as fast as they can and pass tech.
Right.
So cut corners.
Cut
If-
corner. No,
like,
no, totally.
just
That's
don't get caught.
That's
Don't
the
get caught.
sport.
That's the key.
No, yeah, that is the sport in of its way. If we as a collective like to we call them rule breakers, you call them rule makers, right? Like they're the kind of guys that if you
Sure.
can find something that technically works and whatever, and outside of putting rocket fuel in the car, which isn't
Sure.
unheard of, Michael Waltrip reference, but yeah, I mean it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt, and not only that, Kevin Harvick's not even looking all that fast either. There's
I
something.
mean, if Briscoe doesn't win a race, his season is over.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
over. There's
Yeah.
no shot. He has to win. No,
Yeah, it's gonna be brutal. So,
ridiculous series of events. Just laughing, dude. That is, I'm telling you, bro. Like, I ruined the man's career. I'm sorry, Chase. I really am. I'm sorry.
Gosh. you guys, I mean, Ryan Blaney is the only one that
This
has
guy.
out of our guys like to win a race. Like it's Ryan Blaney for you, and then like Bubba hasn't won a race. Well, Bubba won Kansas since you started watching, so I guess Bubba got Kansas. But Bowman hasn't won, and Chase hasn't won since you started watching. So Yeah, we might have to kick you off the pod. No Corey
I'm just
next week
saying.
on the pod. No anybody next week on the pod.
Yeah, I
because-
was gonna say.
But no Corey
Yeah.
exclusively, and it's for a
It's
reason.
true.
So the can of worms has been opened, right? Obviously, last week Denny dropped the receipts on Twitter of the SMT data of Chase Elliott's wheel turning left. This week, on a weird one, when Austin Dillon got wrecked, he claimed that Cindric did it on purpose. He did it on purpose. Where's your soundbite, Jeff? He did it on purpose. He turned left into me. And he should be suspended. And, like, first of all, nobody gives a shit about Austin Cindric and Austin Dillon right now, okay? Like, you don't deserve to get, like, you're not allowed to
that's
get
the
suspended
thing.
if your average finish is below 20th, guys. Relax. Like, it's like listening to JJ Yaley argue with Denny Hamlin. Like, you both suck. Relax.
Oh.
No.
It's interesting. Which one of those out of the two of our drivers, which one is in the playoffs and which one isn't?
How many championships does Denny Hamlin have compared to Jimmy
Oh
Johnson?
yeah,
Is
we're
that what
gonna
you were
throw
saying?
that. How many does Alex Bowman have?
Huh? The same.
How many does Alex Bowman
in half the year, in half the career?
And half the career and still 0 the championships.
Jesus.
0.
You started it, bud.
Yeah, well,
Cheap
JJ
shot.
Yaley and Ross Chastain are going to finish it. So, either way, Denny has dropped the SMT data, and now Austin Cindric justified himself today by dropping the SMT data as well, showing that he indeed did not turn left into Austin Dillon, and instead that Austin Dillon ran out of talent and turned himself. So, what do we feel about these receipts and this data being released to justify what these drivers say? Do we think
I love it.
you love it? You
Yes. If you're gonna step to the plate with a claim, and you're gonna go and bring something out there to the public like that, bring the data to back it up and let people interpret it. To me, that's that's something we haven't had, for a long time, just in sports in general, and we have a lot more ability to bring receipts to the table now than we ever did, and I think it's pretty. I think it's pretty great because most of the time, at least in the past, they would always be, well, they're just whining, and it's kind of like, well, now you have the opportunity to bring something out there to actually say what's going on. You don't have to just rely on the fact that, well, he's a professional race car driver and he knows what's happening. Like, there's actual metrics to go and try and back that up. Now, obviously, with data comes how do you interpret it and how do you put it together and actually make a case for it? And if you can't do that properly, well, you've done a disservice to yourself. But at the same time, I love the fact that we have the information and we have the ability to bring that stuff out and let people kind of make a decision for themselves, and also kind of get more transparency as far as what NASCAR is going to look at if they try and make a decision on what's going on, and hopefully what the rules committee is going to look at when they're going to make that. Now, we've obviously seen the rules committee have plenty of questionable decisions on what they're going to do, but at least I think this adds some transparency to, possible issues here in the future.
I like it. I'm with you, Jeff. I think it's a net positive for the sport if you have the data, right? But to someone who's a little bit of a novice, my concern is less with the data's availability as much as it is with the data's integrity, right? So that's just my lack of understanding. We're talking about, guys, this data is coming in while these cars are going 180 miles an hour, right? So like those little wheel wiggles and stuff, if it's glaringly obvious and all the drivers and all the teams are confident in the data as it's coming in, that the integrity of the data is solid, then great. But if there's any question to me that, it's not an accurate reflection of what actually was taking place in real time, because it's like the football effect. Everything looks like a penalty when you slow it down, right? So like if you're looking at this data and you're kind of, it's a little behind, maybe the GPS is off a little bit, like all this stuff. If the teams are confident in the data, great.
So-
If not, then they should lose it.
So I'm giving you a perspective of Bristol, right? When I got the opportunity to go down there and be in the pits and have that access, thanks to Silver Thunder and those boys. All of practice, they'd go out, they'd do a couple lap runs. All of them would come in. I did not know this. I thought the drivers just kind of chilled over. Every single one would get out. They would go over, and I've even got pictures of Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson doing it. And they are this close to a monitor, watching exactly what we watched. It's got all of that data. And then Chad Knaus came over, and him and Alex were talking about it. And I obviously can't hear because it's practice, but they were talking about, he starts pointing at the line, talking about, hey, take your entry. And then he kind of starts talking about the wheel. And it's like how you enter into, they were talking specifically about he's entering higher into the corner and things like that. All of it based off this data. They would do it every single time. The exact same screens that they were sharing there is what they were looking at for all of practice, after practice, all of qualifying. That was the most important thing. So that data is extremely reliable, I would argue, because of how exactly what you said, the speeds that these cars go, there's no room for the data to be wrong because that's what they craft all these setups for. So when they make the setup decision, and then it's like, all right, cool, this is what we see in the sim. This is what we see here at this data. If that data isn't reliable, then they wouldn't be using it week in and week out, right?
I'm really glad that you brought that up, because what I was going to say to Corey's point is, if the data is good enough to try and help you win a race, it should be it's the same data that everybody else is using for their cars. Sure. If that data is good enough to try and win a race, it should be good enough to try and determine what happens in a race. Now, obviously, I understand there are intangibles and there are things that happen in the human effect that come into play. It's the reason we watch, right? Otherwise, we would just watch a bar graph for a race. There's human elements in that. But at the same time, to me, if the data is good enough to use for these drivers to try and point out some of the stuff they're not seeing out there on the track, then it's also good enough to use that for the same reasons when something else happens, when you're trying to determine what goes on with an incident. Is it 100% everything that you use for it? No. But at the same time, it's very reliable stuff that you can actually gain measurement of outside of, well, he's an asshole and he did this. It's like, well, hold on. What numbers back up the asshole claim? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
you got to come up with something to quantify it. And we actually have that now.
I think to your point, Jeff, the important thing is that interpretation of, okay, Dylan has now come out and made this claim, Cindric wrecked me on purpose. I have the data, whatever. Let's not turn it into a data competition. Let's use some common sense in the process as well. You know what I'm saying? Like,
sure.
If this, like Finn said, if you're running around in 20th, who gives a shit, right? Nobody cares. So, like, let's just have some common sense that maybe we're not just, oh, look, he turned his wheel to the left and therefore that automatically means it was intentional and he's this terrible. Like, let's not, I fear that.
Yeah.
So, like, as long as we're mixing in some common sense with the raw data, cool.
If you post more than 3 SMT photos or videos in a year, you have to fight Ross Chastain. That's the rules.
Don't do that.
You got to fight Ross Chastain. I will say this. I saw a clip. It's Ross Chastain. It's called Ross Chastain Before Trackhouse. And somebody came up and shoved him from behind while he was getting out of the car. He's getting out of the car. He's just sitting there chilling, whatever. And somebody comes up and pushes him from behind. Ross turns around and you see this. And then you see him immediately start taking his glove off, like, let's go. I think Ross knows, like, I don't think the Gragson thing was a defense. I think Ross straight up is grew up fighting. I mean, he's a farmer.
I think he's ready to throw hands.
I think Ross Chastain is about that action at all times.
Yes. And it's about
I think
time.
He is. I think he is. And I watched that and I was like, I'll send that to you guys in the little group chat. But yeah, no, I remember seeing that, and like it is the exact embodiment. You will see the body language of somebody who is ready to go. Like the whole girl taking off the earrings, like, let's go. That's exactly what this was like. Oh no.
Yeah.
Take the helmet off, bitch. Let's go.
And do it. And that's the thing. And I said this on the pod after the thing happened with Gragson too. It's like, good. Shed the bullshit. Get rid of this all shucks routine. Get rid of that crap. Dude, if you're somebody who's going to go and drive like that and get ready to step to somebody who has anything to say about it, act like it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's going to be in too many more fist fights. I really don't.
You're going to find out real quick.
No
I think Sage Karam for the Xfinity Series is a wrestler too, and I've seen like people just straight up like no bout of discussions with him because he's like, you wrestled in high school. I don't want to mess around with you. So, with the data and everything, what I'm actually curious about now that we know that this data is there. I'm curious to when they get access to this data, right? Because Austin Cindric posted his own data, but Denny posted Chase's data. So
Yeah.
I'm curious as to at what point in the weekend you get access to everybody's data, because that's extremely interesting for a couple reasons. One, if you get it at all times, you can see things live during practice that other people are doing. So I imagine that that's not available. Two,
I
I'm
wouldn't think.
curious as to what kind of prep they use, right? I remember somebody talking about, shocker, Jimmy Johnson story incoming, that Jimmy Johnson used to watch film. And I was like, watch film? And he was like, yeah, he would go look at like the in-car cameras of other drivers and just watch the whole race from the year before, the one they were going to, and just see where did those guys enter to find speed. Because back in the 2000s, we didn't have this kind of SMT data, at least not to my
No.
knowledge, right? Not at this level. But now you've got war rooms in Charlotte that are tracking data and fuel and all these different things at all time. It's no longer Excel spreadsheet. So I'm very curious. I wish that maybe we can try to set something up with the driver here soon and see what kind of prep. Because obviously there's sim, and obviously like okay, me sitting in the seat with a setup. All right, cool. That's prep. Obviously there's practice at the track, test sessions, and situations like tire test that some of the guys go to for each of the manufacturers. But I'm curious as to okay, now what can you use for what other resources can you use? Can you use somebody else's film? Does that really help you? Does everybody, now that everybody has cameras on board, can you go back and watch anybody's camera on board and see where does Kyle Busch enter into the corner? What line is he running? Denny used to have what's called the Denny line at Richmond, and was it Richmond or was it Darlington? Denny had a very unique entry.
Darlington was notorious for the Denny line.
The Denny line, right? And all right, cool. How can I find that information? Do I have to watch Denny's in car? Do I have SMT data to see how much he's turning left? And you try to replicate that data. It's very interesting to see. So, but I think all in all, the more receipts, the more accountability, the better the sport will be. So I agree with Jeff there. So
Totally.
Yeah.
So Finn, finally making a comeback in victory lane, bud.
victory lane, baby, by
I
one
forgot
point.
to make picks this week.
I forgot to make I made my picks, but I didn't make my my matchup picks. I already did them for this week though, coming up in Sonoma. Daniel Suarez, last year's winner.
Suarez.
But yeah, victory lane. So here's my speech. I just turned 30. June's my birthday month. Turned 30 on Saturday. I'm feeling it
Welcome to
already.
adulthood.
That's why the glasses are there, and my hairline is just brutal. But I get to share this month with another cool thing about June. I'm not going to get into a long-winded speech here, but I just want to say that obviously NASCAR and its fans and Pride Month don't exactly align all the time. And all I'm going to say is don't come crying about Pride Month to this podcast. You will be turned away. This is a pro Haley Deegan podcast. This is a pro women in NASCAR podcast. This is that Middle Eastern girl that drives in the K&N or one of the other series. We're pro diversity in NASCAR, and we are pro pride.
Pro Bubba, pro Raja, dude.
Yeah, pro Raja Caruth. All right, take your fucking complaints to another podcast. We don't want to hear it. We're pro pride around these parts. We're not going to get political on the podcast, so watching this is going to continue to be NASCAR at all times, but don't expect sympathy for your lame views. That's my spiel.
Well put, sir.
There we go. Got to get out of my way. Don't look at my Twitter. Do not look at my Twitter this month at all. It is not going to be pretty if you do not align with me on certain views. But as always, this is a NASCAR podcast. We will always treat everybody with respect, except for Ryan Blaney, because he's a cat killer. That's the end of it. Let's go to Sonoma with the fast facts.
We will go with fast facts. And also, I'll say that, yeah, I agree with Finn 100%. Happy Pride, everybody. And yeah, I'm glad that you're here. Now we've got fast facts on Sonoma, which has had numerous names, which has had numerous iterations, which has had numerous purposes, and has been around for a very, very long time. And despite, maybe not always being the most exciting NASCAR track in the world, it is a track with a lot of history, and that deserves to be acknowledged, and it is important to keep that circuit out there. So, as far as fast facts, we have this track broke ground in 1967, with its first race being in 1968. It has had multiple names, with now it being Sonoma. It used to be, at its birth, was Sears Point. It then became Golden State International Raceway, and then was known as what I knew it as for a very long time as Infineon Raceway. Its capacity for attendance is 47,000 people. It is a 2.52 mile track with 12 turns in its current NASCAR iteration. And I have some other fun facts. So the first thing I will throw out is the fastest lap at this track in a NASCAR Cup Series car comes with
Oh,
Kevin Harvick.
I was about to say,
with-
I don't think it's a big guy. I think it's Kevin Harvick. That's pretty
Yes.
crazy. Yeah. Continue. I
Yes.
just thought it was a cool fact. He's not a road
Kevin-
course guy.
No, exactly. Kevin Harvick with a minute 16.854. Now, I have some other fun records to go and throw out here. Let's see. The most wins at this track with 5, Jeff Gordon. Most top 5s at this track, 14, Jeff Gordon. Most top 10s at this track, 18, Jeff Gordon. Most starts at this track, 22, Jeff Gordon. Most poles at this track, 5, Jeff Gordon tied with Kyle Larson. Most laps completed, 2,233, Jeff Gordon. Most laps led, 457, Jeff Gordon. So
Yeah.
it's
He owned
safe
this
to
fucking
say,
spot.
yeah, safe to say
That's
Jeff
wild,
Gordon owned this raceway during his entire tenure as a NASCAR driver. So
Yeah. And for you, Corey, Jeff was the first NASCAR driver I would say that took road course racing seriously. At this point, at that time, right, too, there was Watkins Glen and Infineon, and it was all about who was going to finish behind Jeff Gordon. It was actually 2 Gordons because Robbie Gordon was also known as a really, really good road racer. They're not related.
Right.
But yeah, and then of course the era of Juan Pablo Montoya, Marcus Ambrose, and some of the other ringers. But no, Jeff Gordon was the guy. No surprise there. I do have the thing up here on everybody's screen to kind of get a visualization of what we're going to look at. This is not a track that passing is built into the track, right? You look at COTA, our last road course race, right, where there's a lot of extended areas in the turn one, that big sharp left-hander with a lot of runoff that gives a lot of room to go side by side. You got the S's, and then a lot of areas where they've got extension after the corner so people can dive it in more, give themselves more room to make passes. Not the case here at Sonoma. Very, very small track, very limited passing opportunities. One of my favorites, though, is the turn 1 into turn 2. For a couple reasons. One, obviously you can't see the elevation here, but that is an uphill left-hander into a right-hander that kind of then starts to crescent the hill and then start to go down a little bit into turn 3. It's very interesting because you have to make that decision. Do you want to be on the inside lane and get the jump into turn 1? But then if the guys to the right of you stay on your bumper here, they're going to have all the advantage in the turn 2. So that's where a lot of chaos will occur as they go. The S's are fun. It's a very technical racetrack. And then, of course, down into turn 11, the legendary Tony Stewart getting Denny Hamlin. Should put that clip up. But that's another big passing lane area into that hairpin to get you to turn 12 to as a sprint to the start finish line. So there's been a couple times there's been good races and passes in that turn. So it's a fun track. But Corey last year was not a fan of this track at all.
It was the opposite of fun.
Called it a snooze fest.
It was the first race of my NASCAR fanhood that I watched and could not wait for it to be over. Like, let's just skip 100 laps here.
Well,
and I think we've seen an improvement this year with COTA. Removing the stage cautions.
I was going to say the same. Yeah.
Removing the stage cautions is a massive deal. So I'm going to go into Sonoma this weekend fresh, open-minded, right? I'm going to assume that making that change is going to make the race more interesting. Now, that being said, confidence is not high. Confidence is not high, boys.
Well,
I mean, I'm hoping it's good, and I'm going to give it its due. But the only thing to take away from that race last year was I was pumped that Suarez got a dub. Right? Like, other than that, it was an absolute zero on my book. So.
He deserved it last year because COTA and the stage race stuff really screwed him up a little bit because he was the fastest car at COTA by a country mile last year. Yeah. But I'm with you. I think that you nailed it right on the head, right? Just the stage race cars, because now we're going to see strategy. Maybe we see a fuel situation. One second. So, yeah, one of the situations, like without the stage race cautions, I think we're going to see some strategy, right? Maybe we see a situation where somebody tries to stretch fuel. So they're 13 seconds ahead of the guys with fuel and tires, and they're just doing what we can. I think that'll kind of create some suspense. Even with COTA, we saw that with Reddick pitting in extra time compared to everybody else, and then having so much speed, he ran them down and passed them anyways. So Yeah, I'm with you. It can be a snoozer for sure. It could be. And again, there haven't been too many like super memorable finishes at Sonoma outside of that Denny win, and stuff like that. Or sorry, Tony Stewart passing Denny Hamlin on the very last turn, punted him a little bit, but we'll see. I'm excited. It can't be worse than Gateway.
It's a lap time track. The way that I describe, I mean, road courses are like this in general, but this is very much the epitome of a track in which, like, you're going to need to find certain aspects of this when you're watching to, gain a little more perspective on what's going on, because this is the kind of track
Oh, I lost
where
Jeff.
you are going to need to maintain consistent, solid, clean laps.
Yep.
You lost me?
Nope, you're good now. You're
Okay.
good. You came right back in a second.
All right, cool. I was saying this is a track in which you are going to need to run consistent and clean, solid laps throughout the entire race, nonstop. You can get on ovals, and in a lot of cases, you can get away with certain times where, you ran a little sloppy the last couple of laps, or you can try a new line, or you can do something different. This is the kind of track in which you are trying to pursue that perfect lap just about every time that you go out there. When you find that line, you stick to it and you run it and you try and cling to it as hard as you possibly can, because that's how you're going to find your way back up towards the front.
Yep, I feel that. I've said it before. My major complaint is that we race here in the fucking summer when it's like super sandy, because like Sonoma Raceway during the spring is beautiful, super green, super great racetrack, and I wonder if the heat would, and the lack of it being so hot, could change a couple things in terms of its raceability. But
change the tire wear for sure.
Yeah, doing it, it would make some sense to just kind of do it during that early season West Coast swing.
Right.
You know what I mean? But then you're packing two road courses super early in the season. But I mean, that's the direction we're going.
Right.
For better or for worse, NASCAR is now not just turning left.
Swap this with the Dover date, dude. Swap, because if it rains in Sonoma during the spring, then
perfect.
All right, we can race in the rain there, and then Dover gets summer where it's going to be hot and the track's going to be great. And
sure.
Okay, is there any rain? But before I go to weather.com and it's supposed to downpour in Delaware this weekend for no reason at all. But like, that's what I think would be ideal. So Daniel Suarez dominated last year. Chris Buescher was second, and Michael McDowell was third last year. Is there any predictions? Who gets to go first this week? Who wants to go first this week?
I'll go first.
Go for it, bud.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, for me, Chase Elliott.
Yeah, there you go. That's a sneaky one. Yeah,
I think that's it. Yep. Chase runs road. He does well at it. Go for it.
He's the best at road.
He's gonna be.
This would be the one. Right? It's like this would be the comeback party right there if that's the case. And I know this is the second time I picked Chase within the last few weeks, but honestly, I feel a little more confident in the pick this week than I did the first time. So, I think it's going to be a matter of between Elliott and Suarez. Like those are probably your top two. That's probably your safest money.
Gotcha. What are you thinking there, Corey?
Well, I mean, it's a little easy pickings, but I will take the same guy that I took for Coda, and the guy with the greatest name in the history of NASCAR, the Dinger, AJ Allmendinger. Road course ringer. I want to see this guy succeed. I don't know why. When I love the idea of someone being in NASCAR who is a road course driver driving a stock car, right? And I think that he's a super interesting guy in the circuit for that reason. We really don't talk about him.
They're having a super down year. Yeah, they're having a super down year for sure.
Yeah, and then I just want to see for a guy like that who's willing to lace him up and get in these stock cars and drive ovals, 75% of the season, dude. Yeah, I want to see a guy like that succeed when we go to his bread and butter.
Right.
So hopefully AJ Allmendinger. Sure. That's my pick this week. I like the Chase Elliott pick, Jeff. I think that's super smart. He's gonna come back pissed off.
Right. We get to see a lot of road course racers now, right? Like many would say Chase Elliott's the best road course racer in the sport. But Tyler Reddick won 2? He won Road America, he won Indy, and now he's won Coda. So Tyler Reddick, but last year the highest the Toyota finish was 18th. And then after
wild.
Kurt Busch with that, then the highest next Toyota was Truex at 26th. So Toyota struggled. I'm going to go with the man that's got the fastest lap at this track. He finished 4th here last year, and they need a win. So let's go with Kevin Harvick.
Man, that would be a blessing.
Let's go with Kevin Harvick in his final season, nonchalantly stealing a road course win. Something that's not exactly expected of Kevin Harvick, but I don't know. Every time I pick somebody, they either break their back or wreck in the first 4 laps. So I'm gonna go with Kevin Harvick because we're gonna like out negative juju Stuart Haas, right? If you've got negative energy for Stuart Haas, and then I've got negative luck for Stuart Haas with my pick, maybe somebody at Stuart Haas will be fast. So
I like where your head is at. I like where your head is at. Just throw all the negative energy at them, so that like success is just almost like guaranteed.
yeah.
I'll age myself with the reference and go back to an old Angry Beavers quote and say smelly thing plus smelly thing equals not smelly.
There you go, right? If we all stink, no one stinks. So,
I mean, it can't get much worse for SHR. I do see here in your results that you have up on the screen right now. We got 6 Fords in the top 10.
A lot of Fords were real quick. I mean, Cindric is a road course guy. He grew up. McDowell is another road course. He's a V8. If I'm not mistaken, he used to do like V8 supercars. I might be confusing him, but I do know that Michael McDowell, his history is in road racing. It's not oval racing or asphalt or dirt or anything like that. Chris Buescher has been kind of surprising. I don't think I would have expected him to be a road course guy, but yeah.
By the way, congrats, Keselowski, 500 starts as of last weekend.
That's the last thing I want to talk about. So, all right, so check this out. So the Denny bracketology thing, remember we talked about that? If that occurred, it would be Keselowski versus William Byron this week.
All right.
So that's how the bracket would have worked out. Somebody posted that to Reddit earlier, and I found it, and that was my last note here. So
who you got?
Well, they finished 9th and 10th last year. Byron 9th, Keselowski 10th. So that's going to be what we're going to. That's going to be something to keep an eye on. Is the 24 and the 6. I mean, I think the 24, obviously. Like, first of all, Brad Keselowski is really bad at road course racing now. He used to be pretty solid. He's awful.
He was so bad at Coda.
The 6 is just fitting constantly. So I'm not expecting that, but that'll be another side story because if that does get implemented next year, that could be pretty cool. They were talking about it on all the various podcasts. So, so Brad versus William. So very interesting stuff there.
Watch, for sure.
So
watch this. My thought is I remember watching this race with Corey last year and just like listening to him try not to fall asleep while he was watching.
Bro, I was legit,
watch
like,
this be the race. Watch this be the Chase Briscoe win. Like, watch this.
I'll tell you what, Chase Briscoe's even in the top 3 to finish this race. Corey's losing it anyway. So
no, I'm not. I'm just, dude.
He'll have to be awake for that.
I'm pulling for the 14, man. But like, my God, can it get any worse? Like, where is the bottom? I'm a Commanders fan, dude. I'm a Commanders fan. I'm a Penn State fan. I've seen what terrible looks like.
Hey, Penn State's won an Orange Bowl in your lifetime.
Oh, like how much
Penn State's won multiple bowl games in your lifetime. Penn State's won national championships in your lifetime.
Did they? I don't remember.
Yes. What was it, 92, 93, something along those lines?
I started watching Penn State.
Back when they didn't mean as much.
So,
but
back when it didn't.
Well, they don't count anymore because of the Joe Pa thing. So they took all their wins, right? Or did they?
I know what it feels like to be a fan of when things are going really, really, really bad for your squad. And I feel like, while this is not on that level, like, my God, can we get something going, please? I'd be pumped with a top 3, sure, but I'm not expecting it by any means.
It'll be fun.
I just think this would have been a funny one for that to happen on.
It'll be that, or it'll be the Chicago Street Course.
Yeah, which I think is going to be a fun toss-up in and of itself. But at the same time, I am excited for that one, especially after watching Indy at Detroit this past week. Yep. Oh my God, what a race that was. That was awesome. So it's going to be really cool to see the stock cars get out there and start bumping and grinding downtown in a street course setting. It's going to be a lot of fun.
For sure.
Yeah, but I think that's about going to do it for us. Everybody, please make sure you check us out on YouTube, Spotify, and iHeartRadio under the name Intentional Wreck. Please like, share, subscribe, tell your friends. You can also find us on Twitter at intwreckpod. That's at INTWRECKPOD. Find us, follow us, chat with us, and have a lovely weekend, everybody. We will be off next week after Sonoma, and then we will be back in action after the bye week. So we'll see y'all then.
Peace.
Good luck now.
You can take what you want from me.